Welcome to Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That music you hear, that means it's another episode of NEBPreps. I like to get a little more consistency. I'm only here when my partner in crime asks for me. He asks, I'm always going to say yes. I get my buddy, the great Jacob Padilla.
Yeah.
What's up, buddy?
Well, had to get you on because I need to get your NBA take. So your favorite team trade for another player that you can't stand. It's funny how this keeps happening to you. Your teams get all the best players in their respective leagues, but you can't stand watching any of them.
Well, how come I can't get a quarterback in
existence?
Pittsburgh? All right, it's fine. But
Luka Doncic, he's a Lakers fan, by the way, for those that don't know.
it's fine.
He also hates LeBron.
Right.
So
it's a very difficult, and I didn't love AD, but I liked AD a lot more than I like Luka.
there's at least some balance there too.
So
Like-
you're a team guy, like you're a Phoenix Suns guy. You are a program over player guy. You of all people should get it.
Yeah, I do. Like, I understand what you're saying, and I get the point. Like, I don't feel as strongly anti those players as you do, but I do get it. It's just, it is funny that, again, like the cursed existence, like, yeah, you get really good players that you can't stand watching. So
You know, it's funny you said that. I saw a graphic on one of the talk shows of like the top 12 players in the last, I think it's 40 years in the NBA, 12 or 15 or something like that. And they all at one point or another
Played for the Lakers.
have played for the Lakers. So I shouldn't whine, but I am anti-Luka.
Everybody else is very much sick of the Lakers exceptionalism and the fact that this.
Well,
keeps
they're
working
not
out.
good.
Well, but the fact that Nico Harrison just decided, you know, I'm buddies with Rob Pelinka. We're just going to work this deal out. Not going to talk to anybody else. Not even going to consider. Not going to hold them to the fire to get a great return.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I want AD and whatever else makes the deal work. That's fine. Like
But- And you and
only
I
the
are,
Lakers would have that happen to them.
you and I as hoops nerds would just parse through the De'Aaron Fox, Zach LaVine deal, and we were looking at what everybody got in return. And I think that further infuriates Mavericks fans because they have the best player and got the least on the return.
And
The Bulls may have made out better
Yeah.
than the Mavs.
so I think, yeah, the issue there is like, at the very worst, if you want to hold, like AD has been playing really well, at the very worst, or at the best, he's a like same tier as Luka, which, I mean, you can argue that here or there, but they're both top 10 players. You trade them for each other, but you're giving up the future with AD. Like, you're trading a 25-year-old for a 32-year-old.
Yeah.
So you should be getting, even
Soon to be 32.
yeah, if they are equivalent-ish players, you should be getting more back than Max Christie to give up that future with that player for a similar player. Like, that's I think what so many people just are flabbergasted by in this deal is like how much.
Would you do a long haul, short haul grade, or just a bad grade altogether if you're a Mavs fan?
I think it's if Dallas doesn't win a title in the next 3 years or whatever, then I think, which I don't know that that's likely, I think it's a failure because you basically
Fresh off of playing in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, coming off that, but we're not good enough with Luka as our main guy, so we got to completely change our identity. And they built the team around Luka.
With the front court,
They built this heliocentric team with role players on the wings outside of Kyrie and the big men give them role options, and then you go trade the guy that the entire team was built around for AD, who.
Well, the one good thing, if you're an Anthony Davis fan, he gets his wish because he doesnn't have to be a center.
Well, yeah, exactly. Although Harrison talked about him being a great defensive center, and that's why they wanted him.
Yeah, and you've got you have two other bodies that can help you.
Lively's hurt, but yeah, you still got Gafford
in that capacity.
I don't know. So I don't know. None of it still makes, like, I see some of the arguments. I just think that Harrison made a bad bet. And that's how I think it's going to play out. But
all right, Nico, clock's ticking.
Yeah.
As we venture into high school hoops.
Yeah, before we talk on basketball, though, I know you were on the road this weekend celebrating one of our Nebraska Preps athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. Had a chance to go to, and it was a bigger deal than I actually thought. I knew winning the award was pretty cool.
And we're talking about Christian Jones,
who won the National High School Player Linebacker of the Year with winning the Butkus Award. But they also did the high school, college, and NFL. So it was Zach Bond winning the NFL Butkus Award and Jalen Walker from Georgia winning the college Butkus Award. And it was a really well done event, high class. BTN filmed it. I thought Matt Butkus did a fantastic job as kind of the catalyst and the chair of the foundation, raising money for cardiac scans, which is what Dick Butkus went through down the stretch, catching an emergency scan. He was having some heart issues and kind of prolonged the quality of life that he had. But it was an amazing event, and kind of the who's who, the Dana Howards, the Kevin Hardys. There were a lot of past award winners. And you got to shout out Illinois and their athletic department. I felt like very, very hospitable and did a really good job with the event. It was cool. And as you know, we love preps. So that was it was pretty cool for CJ.
Yeah, so congrats to Christian. Really cool honor. But yeah, we are in basketball season. We'll get back to football next year. But let's dive into the hoops. And I think the only place we can start this week is on the girls' side with what Molly Ladwig did for Skutt Catholic against Omaha Central. And our own producer Austin was there. It was a big game chain for Hurrdat Sports. And man, she put on a show. That I think it's probably the easiest big game chain decision that you've ever had, maybe.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, she had 30 points at halftime, and there were only 2 other scores for Skutt at that time. So it was already decided. It just had to go Skutt's way, which it did.
Yeah.
It was interesting too, JP, because Westside had some coaches in attendance that wanted to get there early because they had Central next over the weekend. And so I'm following along on social media with what's going on. And, obviously it's like, wait a minute, the 50 burger, she hit the last 3 with 4:35 to go. Okay.
50 and 3.5 quarters.
That's gave me perspective.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about. Ladwig finished with 50 points on 16 of 22 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3, and 14 of 18 from the line with 5 rebounds, 5 steals, and 2 assists. And Central ended up winning 81-57. But it was a competitive game early. Like, eventually Skutt pulled away, but it wasn't like blowout, like she's just garbage time getting, but like they just could not stop her. And she turned that game into a big win for Skutt. And she is an absolute bucket. She aggressive, skilled, physical, committed to Buffalo, which you don't often see Buffalo recruiting in Nebraska. Like that seems like that one caught me out of the blue when she committed there, but props to them because I think they got a gem for sure.
How about the fact that the schedule too? I like the fact it's not just a Skutt thing. We've seen a lot of teams in town, out of town. Over the last handful of years, probably 5 or 6, the versatility in playing, not necessarily being class to class or state to state. I love the variety of the schedules.
No, 100%. And that's
you're not going to see a Central Skutt any other time, right? I mean,
and
the boys game turned out to be a doozy.
Yeah, they always mix in some Class A games, and like you said, heck, the volleyball, they have to do this at Skutt, but more like half their schedule is out of state teams at these tournaments or whatever, because a lot of teams don't want to play them, I think. But they do whatever it takes to put together a competitive schedule that helps the team get better and have a great season. So
I know it's like you look at the boys' schedule and their record at Skutt, and you think, wait, wow, who's all beating those guys? Then you look at the schedule and you're like, a lot of
Class
teams
are out of state. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they'll take on all comers.
Yep. So congrats to Molly, a fantastic performance, and she's a great player. Moving over to the boys' side, let's start in Class A, where Omaha Westview passed its first test as a new number 1. It's a spot that's kind of been cursed this season. There haven't been many teams that have been able to hold on to that top spot for multiple weeks in a row. But Westview at 17-1 now took care of business. They went to Bellevue West on Tuesday and won 67-66. And I was there. Westview was up 13 early in the fourth quarter before Bellevue West furiously rallied, made it a 3-point game, and they had the ball last. First look, they got up at 3 from the quarter from Braden Morrow, their best shooter. He'd already hit 4 of them. And Taven Zephyr Murphy flew out from the paint, flew out to the corner and swatted the ball out of bounds. Like, that was a big time play because Morrow gets a clean look. That thing was probably going to go in.
Yeah, he's a great shooter. Yeah. I get it, just up in the Metro, but with Morrow, but he's a really good shooter. And we've seen him go on a few heaters before too, 100%. Up to this point.
Yeah. And so that was a big time play. And it was like 4 or 5 seconds left when he knocked it out of bounds. So Bellevue West got back in and didn't get a good look. Bryce Johnson had to like fling up something, a prayer at the buzzer, and Robbie Garcia tipped it in, but it was a 3-point game. So that was really impressive performance from Westview. And the key was they forced 21 turnovers. And you look defensively, they've got some guards that can get into you, get under you, and length on the
they
wings.
Can switch and play a lot of different ways. And I felt like in how quick the schedule adjusts, right? You and I talked the last time. I was getting a little pushback, a little hand-wringing over Westview's schedule. Oh, DB, and, they haven't played anybody this, that. Well, since then, they've got the win over Prep. They beat Papillion South. They beat Buena Vista, who's having a good season. They beat Bellevue West, right? They can't apologize, nor should they.
17-1.
For 17-1, and they do it on both ends of the floor, and seemingly outside of Zephyr Murphy, he's the stat sheet stuffer.
Committed to Washburn, the top D2 team in the country, and think really good for it. They got 3 Nebraskans down there on that roster, and Ty Danielson, Nebraska native there on the coaching
I think
staff.
Cook is there too, right?
Cade Cook, Dylan Clausen, and Brady Christensen. So 3 of those guys playing for that team. So,
and the thing about it is he's clearly the straw. But their versatility in terms of how they can play and who can get you night in, night out.
John Sims in this one, 21, led him in scoring. Amir Martin only 14. Taven had a really bad game offensively. And they still won, and he still made the big defensive play at the end.
So they can get you. So the thing I like about them the most is, and I've seen them a couple of times now, they'll guard you.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to work. They play so hard, and they're extremely unselfish.
Yeah, and they got a couple of tough ones left. They had Millard North on February 13th and Kearney on February 21st.
And we'll talk about Kearney.
Get the tail end.
We'll get them at 10, but coming in at the top 10. So remind me to hold that thought as we get to the number 2 team in the state, one that we just talked about kind of in passing that Westview beat, and one of their first early tests as the litmus is Papillion South.
Yep. 14-3 now. Went 2-0 last week. They pulled out 61-49 win against Central, kind of a slow start, and then they kind of kicked it into gear in the second quarter. And so the thing last week, so early in the season, it was Bryson Ball, just flamethrower, dominating these games, and whatever they were going to get around him was what it was going to be. He had a rough week by his standards. Single digits,
especially efficiency,
and they still win it, and they still won because Levi Webb has continued to elevate his play as a sophomore. He had 20 in this game, and then they beat Omaha North. He had 18 in that one. Led him in
that
scoring.
Was the Levi Webb we saw kind of emerge against Westside.
Yeah, in the Metro final.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, carried a big load there. And then they smacked North 71-43, and Reese Kircher triple-double, 17 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists. So really impressive showing for the senior point guard there. Like getting a triple-double in Class A, that is not easy.
Yeah, I just kind of have a weird affinity going back to the T&E days. But my thing that I like about how his game has evolved, he can affect the game more now, just letting it kind of come to him than just kind of dominating the basketball. His growth and evolution, his basketball IQ, he's fun to watch.
Yeah, as a freshman, he's more of a shooter, and now he's developed more into a playmaker as a senior, and they absolutely love him. Joel Hughes, he'll rave about Reese.
He's really fun to watch.
So he had 13 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 steals in the Central game. So Papillion South goes 2-0 without Bryson Ball being he had 9 points in the first and 5 points in the second, and they won both games by double digits. So that's a good sign for Papillion South moving forward as they get further 100%. Towards the postseason, as the whole team kind of comes together around him. At 3 is Westside still, but it was a bit of a rough week. They survived at Central 49-46.
They needed a strong last 3 minutes in that one. It was 42-40 with about 3 and some change to play. It was tough sledding. Don't let that the final score is pretty indicative, but they had to come from behind. The last 4 minutes of that game, boy, Westside had to grind it out and find a way to get some stops.
Shot 38% from the field and won because they held Central to 41% and forced 17 turnovers. So the defense length getting after it, they needed in that game because shots were not falling. And they only had 2 guys in double figures, shot 2 of 13 from 3 as a team, and found a way to win. And Donnie Barfield is sidelined now with an injury, didn't play last week. And so that's a key piece. He's been one of their better scorers.
And it's shortened the rotation quite a bit.
Yeah. We saw some different, more veteran starting lineup than maybe we'd seen previously in that Central game. Carson Healy started at 12 points, 8 boards, was kind of their best player in the game. But yeah,
and I tell you, when he's under control, playing within the confines, he's experienced, right? He played a ton last year on a pretty successful team. Not a bad option to be able to go to when you're looking to replace a guy like Barfield in those minutes and with a guy that's used to playing in crunch time.
For sure. And they're sitting there at 15-2.
I know they're the consummate but team, right?
Yeah.
That's what but, and they're just kind of quietly trying to stack wins.
And now they got a big one coming up, Millard North on Thursday.
Yeah. And coincidentally,
number 4, Millard North. 11-4 now on the season. They've kind of righted the ship somewhat after maybe a sluggish start compared to expectations. But I was there on Friday when they went to Creighton Prep and beat them 53-44. And it was tied early in the second quarter, and then they just locked down, went on a 29-10 run to take control of that game.
So that was the really bad third quarter from Prep, right? I think they scored, was it 5 or 6 in the third quarter?
Yeah, I don't remember. So they banked in a 3, or they threw in a 3 at the end to get it a little bit closer. But yeah, they went.
Yeah, I think it was a single-digit third quarter from Prep. I was following along with that one because I was curious, right? Because Prep's kind of that team that's like, I'm not sure how. Well, I do because they're well coached, but they're constantly a thorn in the sides of these really good teams. And so I'm like, oh, this will be my first good test to check out Millard North. And I saw it was 27-21 at the half. And then I looked and it was 41-27. I'm like, well, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
Oh, Millard North locked them up.
And again, that's with a 3 thrown in at the buzzer from deep from Guat Guat, who unconventional source of 3-pointer there. So outside of that, they really did nothing the entire quarter. And so credit to Millard North's defense there. Derek Rollins, 19-12. He efficient from the field. Major Monster got off to a good start, knocked down his first 3 threes.
He's interesting.
15 points.
We talked about him a lot this weekend. I think his emergence, or maybe kind of coming along,
big key.
He would be really, really helpful if he gets it going.
Yeah. And that's Major Monster 14 and Corian Gallatin 11 and 7 of 14 from 3 combined between those two. If those guys are hitting shots and making plays around Rollins going to work inside and out.
And plus, because Major can stretch you.
A couple deep ones. So that's when Millard North is what we thought they were going to be, when you've got those guys providing the offense and Amari Rahman doing like stuff in the stat sheet, some rebounds, some assists, a couple buckets here and there.
It's nice to be Millard North, where everybody has all these questions, and you're sitting there, 11-4. You played Simeon. Who else did they play right before Simeon? Yeah, Vashon, right? Right
so
before
lost
that.
at the end of that one, and then
they got Simeon.
Out of
so
Chicago.
It's like, okay, we're here. We're top 5. We kind of had to turn our lineup over. Not a bad place to be if people aren't quite believers yet.
And they followed that Prep win with a 99-27 win over Bryan, 19-12 for Derek Rollins. But Corian Gallatin, 5-9 from 3, surpassed 1,000 career points in the game. So just wanted to highlight that. been a big addition for them. And you look ahead,
really takes some pressure off of handling the basketball in the backcourt.
Yeah, so you get the kind of the dual point guard backcourt there.
He's an elite level ball handler.
Can use Gallatin's off ball shooting as well. It works there for them. And they've got a tough schedule coming up to finish. They got Westside, Westview, they got Wasatch in the Heartland Hoops Classic, Lincoln Southeast, and Papillion South. So they got all those teams remaining on their schedule. So, yeah.
Like Smith and Barney, they'll earn it. Old school commercial. Going into character, though. Don't mind me.
It's going to move on. Yeah.
Thanks for entertaining my creativity. Yeah, next.
At 5 is Lincoln Northeast.
And I'll give you your credit. I'm going to give you some credit before I let you fawn over Northeast. You called your shot almost a month ago where you felt like this was going to be the best team in Lincoln coming off of, I think Lazarick had just gone for 29. Yeah. And you were like, Northeast may be the best team in Lincoln. He's certainly the best player. That's what you felt like.
Yeah. And I thought there were enough complementary pieces around him to give them a chance to be as good as any team down in that city. And they certainly proved it this past week, winning the HAC tournament. Fremont, they beat Fremont 70-48 in the opener, then rematch with Lincoln Southeast. That was the overtime thrower that Northeast somehow stole from, came from behind at Southeast's place. This one, not nearly as stressful. 73-62 was the final. 22-11 second quarter take control there. For
that
Northeast.
Was the difference.
Yeah, 100%. And then they held on. They didn't even get a great game from Lazarick. Shot 3 of 13 from the field. But Hayden Tenneper, 8 of 11 from 3 for 24 points. Nearly tied Lazarick's program record for threes that he had just set the previous week with 9. So it came up one shy of that. But they got that from him, and they got Mo Abdallah. He scored 17 points and didn't miss a shot in the first half. Finished with 21 and 11.
So how they get him his touches within that offense, I think, is going to be interesting to watch as we get closer to light competition in crunch time.
And he's key because they don't have a post, like a traditional post.
Exactly.
He's basically the 5 for them.
I'm right there
wing.
with you.
So they need him to rebound, and he certainly did that in this tournament. I said Zarek only 13 points, 8 assists. Grant Fredericks 10 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. So and you toss in Easton Schweitzer. That is kind of the group that starting 5. They kind of rely on all those guys for their offense. Not a ton offensive punch coming off the bench, but they followed up 71-69 win at Lincoln North Star for the title. They were up 13 after 3.
Furious rally from the Gators.
15 at halftime, 13 after 3, and then Jordan Castor did not score in the first half, scored 25 in the second half.
How fun was that matchup to just be able to watch with Castor and Houston? Is that pretty good?
Going from Mike Nagoy and Houston in the semis to Castor and the Sanders twins, Uzziah and Makai, who are having great seasons. We'll touch on them briefly in a second, but some really good guard play down there in Lincoln between those matchups there. And Castor ended up scoring 25 in the second half to get them back into it. Hit a back-to-back deep threes to make it a one-possession game there, or to tie it up rather, at 69 all with about 15 seconds left. And Monty Ritchie, no timeout. Zarek, get it and go.
And he got it and went.
See, basically, so they tried to send a double trap to him to get the ball out of his hands. He ran right by it. Yep. Then he drew in the help guy from the corner, essentially drew 3 guys, and Grant Fredericks, heads up play, cuts along the baseline, and Lazarick, a big time scorer, that's what he does. He gets buckets, but in that play, he understood, or in that situation, he understood the right play, dropped it off to Fredericks, who scored the reverse layup to put him up with 5.1 to go. And then Castro couldn't get a third straight 3 on the final shot at the end there. So Northeast was able to hold on. Houston finished with 26 points. Frederick had 20 and 10. He was all over the offensive glass with 6 of them. Abdallah chipped in 10, and Schweitzer had 9 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. So a lot of different guys contributing there. I said Castor at 25 for North Star. And
they're right there in the rankings at 14 and 5. And they've got the 2 good wins I like that I think will age well are they got Millard North early. I think it was 48-45.
Down at their place, I believe.
And call the Westview game probably an aberration.
Yeah,
because they were never in that game.
No, Westview, credit to them. That's when I think it started to click for them. You're like, okay, these guys are for real. They were coming in the year like, all right, this team has a chance to be pretty good and compete with
you like the Kearney win? Because that was going to be the other win that I think is a good win that I think will age well. And
yeah, I was watching that on the stream a little bit. At least the first half, they just the ball pressure. They're trapping, they're run and jump. They bad matchup for Kearney with how they're built there. So that was a big win for them. But then again, Northeast pulling that out because North Star had started to, like you said, some of those wins and the way they've been playing recently, they look like they're looking like the best team in Lincoln. They win they earn the top seed in the tournament, and then Northeast comes out and gets them. But North Star, they've got some pieces. Sam Schaefer had 17 and 12, 7 on the offensive boards, 10 apiece from William Schaefer and Jayshawn Afu off the bench. So like they got some pieces. They have to be more disciplined though in their shot selection. Like they took so many bad shots in the first half and they were not falling. And in the second half, they were more aggressive, taking to the basket, getting some better looks there, and they were able to make the comeback. So like they've got a chance to compete with these other top teams, but it's on them. Like they're young. Like they've got a lot of there's not a lot guys that have played multiple varsity years for them. William Schaefer played as a freshman, but outside of that,
what's the difference for you, in your opinion, when you're watching like North Star eke the one out against Southwest right before a couple days before that? You know, I think Schaefer only goes for 6 in that one. Sam, that is, kind of neutralized the scoring versus the North Star you saw against Northeast a couple days later. Like what for you, kind of like what swings that pendulum into, wow, really, really good, or I think they're good.
The better balance, like again, Schaefer and what he was able to do, that makes a difference because now it's not just Castro taking every shot and having to create everything on his own. You got a guy they miss a shot, Schaefer went up and got the rebound and made life tough. And he's long. He's like 6'5", kind of guard wing type there. Pretty athletic. So you can see he can be a force there.
What do you think you can get from Afu?
He's kind of the consistency is, I think, the next step. He's just a sophomore, but he is kind of that microwave scorer where you send him in off the bench, and if he's feeling it, he can knock down 3-4 threes. He can get to the basket, can get to his pull up. I don't know that it's consistently there yet, but he is an option for them to provide some offense when maybe some of those starters aren't hitting shots. So they've got options. Like they're there at 7. They again, you talked about that Lincoln Southwest win. Casper had 28 points, 5 rebounds.
Because that was grimy. It was tough. It was like 66-63. Like that was tough.
Yeah. And it was North Star. They led, and then Southwest battled back. And the Sanders twins I talked about combined for 51 points on over 50% shooting in that game.
That's kind of the key for them.
And Jackson Cruz is hurt.
Efficiency.
So, yeah. And those two, they combined for they knocked off Kearney to get to the semifinal at Kearney. Southwest did, and those two combined for more than 50.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's the question I wanted to ask you about later when we get to Kearney.
So the twins combined for over 100 points in 2 games for Southwest there in the HAC tournament to get them within 1 possession of reaching the final. Again, a shorthanded Southwest team without Cruz, not a ton of offensive punch outside those two. So their growth has been fun to see. I've coached both of them. Those guys are tough, and their continued evolution.
They compete.
They're both having great seasons. So happy to see that from them. But so congrats to Northeast. On the girls' side, North Star won the HAC tournament in a dominant fashion. They lost to Lincoln Southwest earlier in the season, 47-40, destroyed on 50-27, and it wasn't even that close. I think Southwest scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to even get to 27. It forced 26 turnovers. Southwest had as many shot attempts as turnovers in that game by my count, 26 apiece. That is a fantastic defensive performance, 1-3-1, just trapping everywhere, jumping passing lanes. And Sarah Gatwich broke the school scoring record, finished 18 points on 9 and 12 shooting.
Your last name.
Yep. And I talked to Coach Thomas Johnson afterward, and he said She was a girl freshman year. Like they had to convince her to come
play.
out to play because she didn't think she was good enough. She didn't think it would be worth it. Didn't think it would be fun. And they convinced her to talk about it. And now her name's going to be in the record books there. So congrats to North Star achieving their first HAC title there on the girls' side as well.
Now, this team we're getting ready to talk about, I think, is probably the hardest of the aforementioned 1 through 8 right now. The hardest team for me to cap. Never really healthy,
and now
they're really not going to be healthy with DP
for the season. And he was big for what their potential was.
I think so too, because I think he could guard, he would rebound, he did a lot of the dirty work. I still don't know what I'm getting from this Millard South team. They just seem like they're capable.
Yeah, and they did win this week, but it was 70-67 at Elkhorn South, who has been feistier lately after,
I told you a couple weeks, that's a team, in spite of their record, which is like, 5-13 or what, that's a team you're not really excited to play.
And they went a long time before they got their first win. Like, I don't think they won in 24. I think that they had to wait until they got to January to get their first win. But they've been tougher lately with Lincoln Schwartz and Cooper Mracha kind of leading the way. But Kobe Myers stepped up at 25 and 8 points. But again, like you mentioned, Deshaun Prince, unfortunately injured, out for the year. And he was the connecting piece. You could plug him in with all their different lineups and provide defensive presence. He was out there in the closing lineups for some of their games. So they're going to have to find a way to
really
replace him.
Flat out defend.
Yeah. So he was different than everybody else had. So they're going to have to find a way to regroup now and change. Still, Isaac Jensen isn't all the way back. He's still trying to find himself. He's had 1 or 2 games like, okay, there's the Isaac from last year. But outside of that, it's been a little bit of struggle for him. So like he's a guy that can change maybe things for them if he kind of gets into a rhythm and back to the player that he was last year. But it's just hard coming off an injury mid-season to jump back in, especially after obviously how much he put into football and then jumping right into basketball without any kind of prep really because of the injury. Understandable that he's still trying to find himself, but that is kind of, I think, the wild card for them.
I got to ask Coach Lucian how he balances getting those guys ready, because the guys usually get ready about the start of the third quarter and they go do their thing for pregame. And his daughter, he's got a freshman phenom that's pretty good in her own right. He probably lets the assistants handle it while he watches his daughter do her thing.
Yep. So Millard South, they're 13-7, 9 Bellevue West after the loss, 10-7.
It's a dangerous number 9, isn't it?
Yeah. They beat Millard West 63-39. Really kind of, I'm sure Coach Klein had some key words to them after that Westview loss, again, with the 21 turnovers. And Robert Garcia, 24-10 in that one. So just ho-hum, another double 20-10 for him, which he's been doing all season.
He plays so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I like his body. He's changed his frame a little bit too, man. You could tell he's playing the long game for maybe the next level and what he may be asked to do.
100%. And he's doing a little bit of both. Like he's still like working on some stuff that he wants to be in college, but he is embracing the like bully ball. I have to be the
a lot of it is
presence.
His mentality too, man. He plays hard.
Yeah.
I think he enjoys giving it to you.
100%. And he's been what they've needed from him as those young guards, the young players around him kind of figure it out at the varsity level. So yeah, I was 10-7 record, but I don't think anybody wants to play them and is going to think of it as an easy night.
Which brings us to the team that I wanted to ask you about. Is I look at their roster. Obviously, I follow them close. You look at kind of how they play. You talked about the bad matchup and how they got pressured in the backcourt. Is there any other answer that you think Coach Bronick can come up with? You know, it's not like those guys are going to be better ball handlers or more athletic in the backcourt overnight. Is there a different way that they can play where they can accentuate their strengths? Because they're very, very dangerous. It's just when they lose, it's almost always the same way.
Yeah, and I because they got washed out of end up losing their game at the over in Council Bluffs. So that I was hoping to see them play in that one. Might have been one other time this year that I was hoping to see him play, but it didn't work out. So I haven't seen him in person. That watching on the video, that North Star game is the only time I've seen them actually play this season. But yeah, in the Southwest game, Ben Johnson had 23 points and 8 of 13 shooting. The rest of the team had 36 on 13 of 35. So Jacob Weber, Ben Johnson, you know those guys are going to get as many shots as they can handle. They have to, I think Leighton Pater is probably the next guy that can bring some offensive punch.
He's too good of a coach for me to think that that's just going to be the blueprint on how teams defend him. But so far, that's kind of been the blueprint for when they struggle.
Yeah, and Ben is, I think, miscast as the lead ball handler, but he kind of has to be the lead playmaker for them. Like, I think he has to do so much. And I think I don't think Jacob's played up to the potential that he has. And that's kind of the scary thing about them. At any given game, he could go off for 30,
capable.
hit 8, 9 threes at any point. Like, that's going to be coming at some point this season. You just hope that you're not on the receiving end of it if you're facing Kearney. But that kind of is at this. They either need, and I think Krasso was out. I don't think he played this past week. Congrats to commit to Iowa Western for football, but that's another guy that can do some things for them.
A good player too, man. They got that's a pretty good get.
Yeah, so hurts to not have that piece for a team that doesn't have a lot of guys that can do something with the ball in their hands and provide that punch. So they got to keep cracking away at it. Keep they're going to keep competing and just hope that they can get some better shooting luck for some of these guys down the stretch. But still 10-4.
No, you want to zip through Class B with almost no changes outside of 6 and 7. And it's no coincidence why it flip flops.
Yeah, no change in the top 5. The kind of notable result there is Norris beat Pius 73-66. And again, Pius, you talk about those tough schedules and Skutt and facing
brutal schedule.
Pius is brutal schedule.
Come up from A to B, like they fluctuate. Yeah.
They're 11-8 and 4th in our coaches poll, which shows the respect that the coaches have for the schedule they've played and what they've accomplished. Evan Greenfield's been playing really well lately for Norris, and just sophomore.
They're tough.
They got so many options.
You're going to say that a lot.
Yeah.
Just to this, just to that.
Yeah. Pius, they also destroyed Gretna East, who is a top 10 team, 61-32 before facing Norris, knocked Gretna East down to 7. So Pius is very much, Michael Haith, I think, had a great week. Parker Kelly's a really solid senior for them. Those two kind of lead the way. So Pius right there at 4. And then Bennington took a tough schedule. They took some losses, but
especially early. Dropped
one to Hastings, 72-66. And that's one that hurts for that. The loose Hudson Hoover, the big piece of what they were going to be coming into the season. But that comes after beating Elkhorn 77-70. So Bennington, that's kind of like going on there with that loss. It's one that you don't necessarily want to take, but they got a chance to kind of offset that with a big win when they face Skutt on Tuesday.
Let me hop back to 5 because I was really excited when we were texting back and forth a couple weeks ago when you were going to watch Scotts Bluff. I feel like that's pretty good. Walk me through the 15-3 sitting at 5 relative to kind of the top 4.
Yeah. Well, do you see what they did in their holiday in their tournament?
That's the only reason I'm asking you the question.
101-12.
Yeah, I'm asking.
And I saw everybody destroy that team. It does not seem like that team should have a varsity squad just based on the results that I've seen. Somehow they had 5 wins, I thought. But anyway, 101-12 points. That is insane. And that's.
When I get it, it starts with Kelly, and it's a really good team. Where do you think they are relative to teams that we've seen so much, like Elkhorn North, Skutt, and Norris?
I think 5 is about right, kind of middle of that pack. Okay. They're not as well-rounded as the teams at the top, but they've got that high-powered backcourt with Kelly and Trey Boswell and Riley Meininger. Like those 3, like if you got all those guys going at the same time, they can compete with anybody. But not a ton of size. Like Kian Delgado does his best there as kind of an undersized.
Yeah, I just trying to envision him like handling guys like Scholl in that front court at Skutt. And I'm just thinking, how do you think that works with the 3-guard versus?
Well, and we saw they struggled. They came and beat Bennington, which is another all-guard lineup, and then on the way back to the Panhandle, stopped at Crete and dropped that one the next day. Crete's a good team. But they don't have a ton of experience
coming in at 10.
You got Justice Gardner and Carter Resney is kind of lead guy. And Carter Resney hit game winner. I saw last week. Tough, deep 3, like volleyball line 3 for them. So good win for Crete there. But yeah, Scottsbluff, I I think they're probably right about there, 4,
Okay.
5, 6 in that range. But that's a team that I don't think you want to face for sure. And then in C1, to wrap things up here quick, some noteworthy results.
You got to shout out Cozad. It's good to see the haymakers back throwing haymakers.
And that is kind of the biggest, because Lincoln Lutheran, they avenge their loss to Concordia, beating them in their conference tournament.
Who I still really, really like.
Yeah. So Lutheran beat Lincoln Christian 67-52. Then Jacob Duetzman had 24 at 5 and went 5 of 5 from 3 in that game. Then they avenged their loss to Concordia 53-51, and then they lost to GICC in the final. And GICC is moved up to number 2 in our C2 poll.
Yeah.
So that's a really good win for them. But so yet they remain number 1 in the poll because Ogallala took their first loss to Cozad, who beat. And
when I say no love loss, no love loss. I had a roommate that was I had 2 roommates that were from Cozad, and my good buddy who is actually Ogallala's head coach. His little brother with like my guys. That there's zero love loss there. I know that was emotional.
Yeah. So they beat Valentine, Noah Shoemaker, 26 points, 7 boards in that one. Then they beat a really good Holdridge team, 69-58. Hayden Hoffmaster led the way with 18 points, 5 boards in that one. And then 66-61 over Ogallala in the final. They were down 4 after the third quarter, and then just controlled the fourth, 23-14 the final period to pull out the win. Shoemaker, again, 24 points, 9 rebounds, and he's had a great career for them. He's having another big season and had a big week for Cozad to rise up to number 2. They're 17-2 on the season, and they get a rematch with Holdridge on Thursday. So test
right down the street. It should be a good one.
Yeah, and not a whole lot happened in the lower classes. So, and we've already went long. So I think we'll call it the show right there.
Any shout outs?
Now we got something. We're working on something separate for that. So stay tuned to our social feeds.
He's the professional. We call that a tease, I think, in this business, man. It's always fun catching up with him. We appreciate Austin chiming in, man. It's always nice when you get a producer that's very knowledgeable and can keep us on track and fill in the blanks. It's a pretty versatile show, man. It's another episode of NEBPreps. Catch us next week. Don't you dare miss it.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.